In a small, forgotten village surrounded by endless woods, an old man named Victor lived in solitude. His home was an ancient, creaking wooden house perched on the edge of the forest. Victor was a kind-hearted soul, spending his days carving wooden toys for the village children and writing stories about the strange dreams that haunted him. But Victor's life was lonely. His only companions were the faint echoes of his own footsteps in the empty house. One evening, as the sun sank behind the thick trees, Victor ventured into the woods to collect firewood. The air was colder than usual, and the quiet was unsettling. The birds had stopped chirping, and the rustling of leaves seemed unnaturally loud. The deeper he walked, the stronger the feeling of being watched grew. When Victor bent down to pick up a bundle of sticks, he heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible sound of footsteps behind him. He froze. Slowly, he turned his head, but there was no one there. "Just my imagination," he muttered, shaking his head as he hurried back toward the village. As he approached the gate of his house, Victor noticed something unusual. A figure stood in the distance, just beyond the tree line. It was a young girl, no older than 16. Her face was pale, almost glowing in the moonlight, and her long black hair seemed to move slightly, even though the air was still. "Hello," Victor called out, his voice trembling. "Are you lost?" The girl didn't respond. She stood motionless, her bright red eyes fixed on him. Her eerie smile sent a chill down Victor's spine. Before he could take another step, the girl disappeared, vanishing into the shadows without a sound. Victor stood frozen for a moment, trying to make sense of what he had just seen. He quickly entered his house, bolting the door behind him. That night, as he sat by the fireplace, the unease refused to leave him. He felt as if someone, or something, was watching him. The room grew colder, and strange whispers filled the silence. Victor knew one thing for certain: something unnatural had entered his life, and his quiet world would never be the same again. The next morning, Victor tried to shake off the strange encounter. It was just a trick of the mind, he told himself as he carved wooden toys in his workshop. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. The air in his house felt heavier, and a chilling breeze occasionally swept through, even though all the windows were shut tight. As evening fell, Victor lit a fire in the hearth and settled into his favorite chair, hoping the warmth would calm his nerves. Just as he began to relax, a faint knock echoed through the house. Startled, he turned toward the door. He hadn't had a visitor in weeks. "Who's there?" he called, his voice uncertain. There was no reply, only silence. Gathering his courage, Victor approached the door and opened it cautiously. Standing there, in the dim light of the moon, was the girl from the previous night. Her pale face looked even more unnatural up close, and her fiery red eyes seemed to glow in the darkness. Victor's heart pounded. "What are you doing here? Are you lost?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The girl tilted her head slightly, a faint smile playing on her lips. "I'm here for you," she said softly. Her voice was sweet but carried an unsettling echo, as if two voices spoke at once. "For me? I don't even know you," Victor said, stepping back. The girl stepped inside without permission, her bare feet making no sound on the wooden floor. Victor was frozen in place, unsure whether to run or confront her. "I've been watching you for a long time," she continued, her gaze fixed on him. "You're kind. You're lonely. I like that about you." Victor felt a shiver run down his spine. "Who are you?" he whispered. The girl's smile widened, revealing unnaturally sharp teeth. "I'm someone who doesn't belong in your world," she said. Victor tried to move, but his legs felt heavy. The girl's presence seemed to drain the warmth from the room. "You need to leave," he managed to say. "I'm not going anywhere," she replied. "I chose you, Victor. And now, we're connected forever." Victor's heart sank as the door slammed shut behind her. Victor sat frozen in his chair as the girl paced slowly around his living room, her red eyes scanning every corner of his house. The fire in the hearth flickered weakly, as if afraid of her presence. Victor's mind raced. Who, or what, was she? "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" Victor finally asked, his voice trembling. The girl stopped and turned to face him. Her eerie smile sent a chill down his spine. "I've already told you," she said softly. "I like you, Victor. I've been watching you for years." Victor's hands gripped the arms of his chair tightly. Years. That's impossible. I've never seen you before. The girl laughed, her voice echoing unnaturally through the room. That's because I didn't want you to see me. But I've always been here, in the shadows, waiting for the right moment. Victor's breath quickened. You're not human, are you? He asked, though he already knew the answer. The girl's smile widened, revealing sharp, gleaming teeth. No, I'm not. I'm a devil, and I've fallen in love with you. Victor's heart stopped for a moment. A devil, in love. The words felt absurd, but the terrifying reality of the situation made them impossible to dismiss. You can't love me, he said, trying to reason with her. I'm an old man. You're just a child. The girl's expression darkened. I'm not a child, Victor. I only look this way because it pleases you. She took a step closer, her eyes glowing brighter. And you're not just an old man. You're special. Your soul is pure, untouched by greed or hatred. That's why I chose you. Victor felt a chill creep up his spine. Chose me. For what? To be mine, she replied. Forever. Victor's instinct screamed at him to run, but his legs wouldn't obey. The girl raised her hand, and the room grew darker. Shadows crept along the walls, and a strange, low whisper filled the air. You have two choices, she said, her voice echoing unnaturally. Accept my love willingly, or I'll take what I want by force. Victor's blood ran cold as the girl's form began to shift, her true demonic nature flickering beneath the surface. He realized then that his nightmare was just beginning. Victor didn't sleep that night. He sat by the dying embers of the fire, his mind consumed by fear and confusion. The girl had disappeared into the shadows, but her presence lingered, like a heavy weight pressing down on his chest. For the next few nights, she visited him. Sometimes she spoke softly, her words eerily sweet, and other times, she stood silently in the corner, watching him with those glowing red eyes. Victor tried to ignore her, but it was impossible. Her voice echoed in his mind, even when she wasn't there. One night, she appeared by the window as Victor was writing in his journal. The pen slipped from his hand as he froze in terror. Victor, she said, her voice softer than usual. You don't need to be afraid of me. How can I not be? Victor whispered, his voice hoarse. You're a devil. The girl stepped into the room, her bare feet leaving no sound. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to love you, she said, tilting her head. Don't you want someone to end your loneliness? Victor's hands trembled. Not like this. Not with you. The girl's smile faded, and her eyes darkened. You don't understand, Victor. I've chosen you, and I don't take no for an answer. What do you mean? He asked, fear creeping into his voice. I can give you everything you've ever wanted, she said, stepping closer. I can make you young again. I can fill your life with joy. All I ask in return is your soul. Victor stared at her in horror. My soul. Why? The girl laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the room. Because it's pure. It's untainted. That kind of soul is rare, Victor, and I need it to grow stronger. Victor's heart raced. And if I say no? Her smile twisted into something cruel. Then I'll take it anyway. But it will be painful, Victor. Very painful. Victor felt trapped. He couldn't run from her, and he couldn't fight her. He knew he had to find a way to escape this nightmare, but how could he outsmart a devil? As the girl faded into the shadows once again, Victor made a decision. He would seek help, no matter the cost. His only hope was to find a way to banish her before it was too late. Victor's search for a solution led him to the village's old priest, Father Dominic, a frail but wise man known for his knowledge of ancient rituals. Victor hesitated as he explained his plight, fearing the priest wouldn't believe him. But as he spoke, Father Dominic's face grew grim. You're dealing with a powerful entity, the priest said. A devil doesn't love, it consumes. She desires your soul, Victor, not your heart. Is there any way to stop her? Victor asked, desperation in his voice. Father Dominic nodded slowly. There is an ancient banishment ritual, but it's dangerous. If you falter, the devil will grow stronger, and her wrath will be unimaginable. Victor had no choice. Teach me, he said firmly. That night, armed with holy water, blessed candles, and the priest's sacred chants, Victor prepared for the ritual. The instructions were clear. He had to summon her and complete the incantation without fear. But fear was all Victor felt as the clock struck midnight. The air grew heavy, and the flames of his candles flickered wildly. She appeared, stepping out of the shadows like a figure from a nightmare. Her red eyes burned brighter than ever, and her smile was filled with malice. "Victor," she said, her voice a sinister melody. "You've been busy." Victor swallowed hard but stood his ground. "This ends tonight," he said, raising the holy water. The girl's expression twisted into rage. "You think you can banish me? You belong to me," she screamed, her voice echoing unnaturally. Victor began the chant, his trembling voice growing louder with each word. The girl shrieked, her form distorting as shadows swirled around her. The house shook violently, and the whispers in the air grew deafening. "You can't escape me, Victor," she cried, lunging toward him. Victor threw the holy water at her, and her scream pierced the air. The ritual's light engulfed the room, and for a moment, everything went silent. When the light faded, she was gone. Victor fell to his knees, exhausted but relieved. He had survived. Or so he thought. As he sat in the silence, a cold breeze swept through the room. In the mirror across from him, he saw her glowing red eyes behind his reflection. Her voice whispered softly, "You can't get rid of me, Victor. I'll always be with you." The story ends with Victor staring at the mirror, his face pale with terror, knowing the nightmare had only begun.